In a so-called free state, officials and stakeholders concoct solutions to problems often created by other bureaucrats and with little regard for infringements on the people. These stories are born at the apex of freedom and entrepreneurship. We foolishly advocate for the taxpayer. Brian's Beat presents Freedom Fools.
It's a whole new ball game. Saturday afternoon, sunshine, where I drowned. I don't know what to think. At any rate, we're here for 3 hours, and I'm ready for you. Freedom Fools on WBSM. Yes, indeed. First of all, Paul Santos, great show today. And I hope you have many, many more. This idea of you doing 7 to 9 and me coming in from 1 to 4, it is suiting me very well. I got to tell you, it was so different lying in bed 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, 7, 8, and knowing I didn't need to get out of bed and run over to the radio station. Not that I do love that Saturday morning show. But it was so different. I think I've missed 4 Saturday mornings in who knows how many since 2017. So believe me, it was a huge difference. But I am excited to be in this time slot with you right now, 508-996-0500. The Brian's B quote of the day. It's only a small journey to a new direction. It's only a small journey to a new direction. I'm going to be straight up. I see bits and pieces of the second Karen Reed trial, but I'm not really paying that much attention to it. And I think I'm biased already. You did it the first time around, and it seemed like an overwhelming majority of the jurors did not think that she was guilty. And so now to have the second trial, I looked, Supreme Court made their ruling. They made their ruling after the second trial already started. Yeah, their ruling was, we're not going to take it up. So I know there are people on both sides of the street when it comes to Karen Reed. What's the fascination about murders? I guess that's what we all hate it when somebody like this guy, Roman, who was killed sitting in a car by Monty's Park last week. We all want something, as the saying goes, done to stop crime. And in just a second, I'm going to tell you what President Trump is planning to do about crime, in case you didn't hear it. In fact, I did not know about it until Thursday, Friday. First part on Thursday, second part yesterday. And actually read up on it today. Be that as it may. Crime is all around us, and we have law enforcement officials fighting crimes that I do not believe should be crimes. And there are others that think that, well, law enforcement needs to fight these crimes, but when you're fighting those crimes and you only have so many law enforcement officers, how can you fight all the crimes? It's like, and I know many people will agree with this. It's like the firefighters are called to a Narcan situation in downtown New Bedford. They go there. Meanwhile, there's a 3-story fire going on in the South End. And their lives at stake. Next thing you know, we have to get help from either Dartmouth or Fairhaven because our firefighters are taking care of somebody dealing with Narcan. Dealing with an overdose, but using Narcan to take care of that person. Now, I'm not trying to say that the firefighters should not be taking care of the Narcan person, but they only have so much to do. And so little time to do it. I am glad that there are not many fires in the city or in suburban communities. Maybe we should change the name from firefighter to something else. I don't know. And there are not too many homicides. But as somebody once said to me, isn't one too many? It's hard to argue that. So did you hear about this? And it happened on Monday. And I have to be honest with you, I didn't hear about it on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, channels 6, 10, 12, the Boston channels, NECN, 7, 4, 5, 25. Now, I openly admit I don't see every station every day, so some of these stations may have had it. But do you know about strengthening and unleashing America's law enforcement to pursue criminals and protect innocent civilians? Have you heard about strengthening and unleashing America's law enforcement to pursue criminals and protect innocent civilians? As I said, I did not know about it until Thursday into Friday, and I've had a chance to read it a couple of times today. By the authority vested in me as president, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered. Safe communities rely on the backbone and heroism of a tough and well-equipped police force. My administration, and this is not the governor talking, this is the President of the United States. My administration is steadfastly committed to empowering state and local law enforcement to firmly police dangerous criminal behavior and protect innocent civilians, citizens. Now that sounds pretty good. It sounds pretty good. Next paragraph. When local leaders demonize law enforcement and impose legal and political handcuffs that make aggressively enforcing the law impossible, crime thrives, and innocent citizens and small business owners suffer. My administration will therefore establish best practices at the state and local level for cities to unleash high-impact local police forces, protect and defend law enforcement officers wrongly accused and abused by state or local officials, and surge resources to officers in need. Are you digesting a lot of this? The executive order goes on to say, my administration will work to ensure that law enforcement officers across America focus on ending crime, not pursuing harmful, illegal race and sex-based equity policies. The result will be a law-abiding society in which tenacious law enforcement officers protect the innocent, violations of law are not tolerated, and American communities are safely enjoyed by all their citizens again. That's the purpose and policy right there. Let me get into some of the meat and potatoes, and I am very curious as what you think about what you're hearing here. Section 4. I am skipping ahead. Section 4. Using national security assets for law and order. Paragraph A. Within 90 days of the date of this order, the Attorney General and the Secretary of Defense, in consultation with the Secretary of Homeland Security and the heads of agencies as appropriate, shall increase the provision of excess military and national security assets in local jurisdictions to assist state and local law enforcement. So, if I can encapsulate what the president's executive order is doing here, it has Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, and Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary. They are going to huddle and try to figure out how the administration can use the military on our streets. That's encapsulating what this says. Paragraph B, within 90 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Defense, in coordination with the Attorney General, shall determine how military and national security assets, training, non-lethal capabilities, and personnel can most effectively be utilized to prevent crime. What does that sound like to you? And is it acceptable to you? And before you even go down this particular road, and I've read this executive order a couple of times, I'm looking for where it might say illegal immigration. I'm looking for it. And quite frankly, I do not see it. 508-996-0500. I do appreciate your patience. Hello.
Hey, Brian.
Hey,
how
Brian.
are you?
I am excellent. How are you? Actually,
Hey,
I'm disturbed. I'm disturbed.
I bet. You remember that old 60s band, the Jefferson Airplane, and the song Volunteers?
Of America. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of what's going on right now.
How do you figure?
Everybody's going nuts, and it's getting worse.
So is that what the song was about? Everybody was going nuts? And I say this as a person who used to live right down the street from where they used to practice the Jefferson Airplane.
I think they were talking about the anger towards the Vietnam movement and the politicians. Like now.
Yes, I do think it had a lot.
Yet.
Well, we don't.
Oh,
What do you call when our military is lobbing bombs in Yemen? And please don't get me wrong, the Yemenis, the Houthis, are retaliating. So is that not a war of some sort, whether it's declared or not?
Yeah. It's always when a chicken hawk's in there that things like this happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Well, we have ground troops in there. What's his name? Barron Trump? Why don't we drop Barron Trump in there? Let him fight. Never happened.
Yeah, I don't think that'll happen. I don't think he'll. First of all, you have to enlist, at least right now, you have to enlist to go into the military.
Oh, Daddy Boy should take him right down there and enlist. He's such a patriot.
Yeah, well.
He's the biggest con artist in U.S.
I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
I'm tired of sticking up for him. He's the biggest con artist in U.S. history. I knew all this crap was going to happen. There's more to come. Anybody that supports him...
Well, you brought up a good thing. There's more to come. What do you think is... If this is what's out there right now as an executive order... Huh?
God only knows what he's going to do. He's unstable. They need to kick him out.
Okay. All right.
They have...
I get you. I get you. I don't see anybody coming with jackboots to kick the president out of the White House as of this particular time. I did send many of my friends this executive order. One of them said, I don't think it's anything really to worry about. If this were Nazi Germany, it would be different, but this isn't Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany wasn't Nazi Germany until the Nazis took over. And I looked at this order and I could not help but think to myself, so maybe this is what Steve Bannon was talking about when he was saying, there are different ways that we can get Trump to a third term. And I'm wondering in my head if there is some way, shape, or form that you would not necessarily have an election in 2026 or 2028 if there was some type of martial law. Why? I think we can all agree if we look at the city of New Bedford. The police officers would tell you that they are shorthanded. I have not heard any New Bedford police officer say, well, let's call in the military. Why don't we have the military help supplement for our lack of officers? I haven't heard it. And yet, President Trump, through this executive order, is trying to get the Attorney General and the Defense Secretary to try to figure out how to make that happen. And Section 2 says this. I want to get into it because I think it's very, very important. The Attorney General shall take all appropriate action to create a mechanism to provide legal resources and indemnification to law enforcement officers who unjustly incur expenses and liabilities for actions taken during the performance of their official duties to enforce the law. Huh. 508-996-0500. Thank you. Hello.
Hey, how we doing?
We are. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I'm coming in at it at a different angle.
Let's hear you.
I see it as, I see it as what happened prior with, cities and towns that were getting storefronts burnt and, courthouses taking over and police stations getting run down. And so I see it more of, if there is a city, in turmoil like that they're not able to handle it, that armed forces would be able to assist.
Gee, I wish it said something like that.
Well, I mean, I don't think they're going to be sending out. I could be wrong. I don't think they're going to be sending out the military just to everyday situations. I think it's a little bit more than that, but that's my 2 cents. You know what I mean? But that's how I would look, because we were, and that happened before.
I'm sorry, what happened before?
I said there were cities that got overrun with people, and there wasn't enough police officers to handle what the crowd was doing. So for them to take over police stations and courthouses and burns people's storefronts and all that stuff, that means there was no law and order, and they didn't have enough help to do anything. So,
but if we bring the military in, isn't that also saying we don't have law and order? The executive order kind of reeks of we don't have law and order.
Well, like I said, you can read it that way, yes, and I read it a different way.
I won't argue about we can read it differently, but I've also seen how some attorneys have read it, and they're reading it the same way that I am.
Well, so look at it. They had a Supreme Court, right? 5-4 regarding what the hell was it? They just had a big ruling on immigration. The guys coming in, and 5 people voted
one way and 4 voted the other. Yes,
like that. Yeah, yep. And then 4 the other way. So it's just crazy.
What's your point about the Supreme Court's vote?
Well, it's just that it's so close on something that shouldn't be, in my eyes, anyway.
So, to be clear, obviously these are 2 different cases. We're going from fruits to vegetables, but the court is the arbiter of one side against the other. If the court says that, this is the way it's got to be, they have the ruling thumb.
Right. I agree with that.
Okay. All right, man. Thanks for the call.
I agree with that.
I do appreciate it. Thank you. 508-996-0500. Executive order strengthening and unleashing America's law enforcement to pursue criminals and protect innocent civilians. We hear a lot about executive orders. Why is it, or how is it, that I missed this one as we were approaching the 100th day in office, second term for this president? Somehow, some way, this executive order just didn't make it. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Winging.
Beautiful day today, and it's great to hear you. I'm sure you're happy to be out in the afternoon doing this.
Sure, no, I am. Look, it's a better time for me. I get to sleep in, especially after leaving here at 7 o'clock. It's not like I have to go home and go to bed. The other part of it is, there's always a yin to the yang. And the fact of the matter is I could be out enjoying a great day right now. But whatever.
You could be playing golf. You could be playing golf.
Well, let's not kill the day.
The stripers are coming up. So go fishing. I'll have to agree with the last caller on just my interpretation of what you're talking about. Maybe that's wishful thinking. Because we always interpret things the way that our mind is already kind of made up on it. But I was thinking, all right, Seattle, there's a great documentary on how Seattle is dying. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I used to live it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was actually K-Rock or whatever the local media station is up there. They did a documentary on it about how the police are so fed up because they haven't been able to do their jobs even because the local government is saying you can't do this, you can't do that. So in my mind, I'm thinking that is where Donald Trump's order is coming from. And you think of Minneapolis, where Minneapolis was burning following the George Floyd thing. And again, the police wanted to do something, but they weren't allowed to. So they could do nothing but stand there and watch their cities burn, where it was actually their job. They joined up to protect their communities, but they were unable to.
But it seems to me, going to the Minneapolis case, the National Guard came in. That's what the National Guard does. They supplement. You don't send in the 82nd Airborne.
I'm not so sure that you can. Was that not Fourth Amendment?
Fifth, I believe.
Fifth Amendment. Okay.
No, you might be right on the fourth. Actually, I'm sorry. I've got the book in the corner over here. I'm not going to pull it out at the second, though.
Whichever one it is, we're both on the same page with it. But I don't believe the U.S. military can be used against citizenry.
I agree with you.
Guard would be for,
I agree with you. However, the president, and he should know this, and if not, certainly his staff attorneys like Stephen Miller, the executive order asked him to get the attorney general and the defense secretary to figure out how to do it. And they've got 90 days to do it.
Right. I have faith that something's going to come out of it. Maybe it's going to backtrack. Maybe the language is going to get tweaked a little bit. But we'll just have to wait and see. But I would like, I'm happy that in New Bedford and Boston got wrecked. Not as bad as Minneapolis, but with the Antifa riots, BLM riots, and stuff like that, you're seeing these communities getting destroyed, and the police all they can do is stand there. If they want to keep their jobs, all they can do is stand there and watch it happen. So they're helpless. So
in other words, you're trying to tell me the police can't stop rioting from happening in their own city, in their own jurisdiction. I find that hard to believe.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said I find that hard to believe that the police can't break up a melee going on in the city. We see it all the time.
Well, we watched it happen like in Seattle and like I said in Washington, D.C. Same thing happened. The police said all they can do is stand there and watch it. And Minneapolis, there are documentaries on that too, how the police precincts were getting burnt down and the cops were getting chased out. Because they couldn't do anything. They weren't allowed to do anything to defend themselves or their community. So they had to run away, turn tail and run.
Let's talk about what you just stated for a second. They weren't allowed to do it. That tells me one of two things. They weren't allowed to do it because maybe there is something that their mayor or governor has stated you cannot do anything about it. Otherwise, they could physically go in there and try to stop it. That's right. One thing. The other part is the governor calls in the National Guard, and the National Guard comes in to supplement what's happening with the police force. Okay? So there's that. Now, unless you have the military already in your city, they're not going to be able to come there in time to stop whatever is going on at that particular time.
Very true. First responding. Yeah, yes. Yeah, got it.
All right, man. Thanks for the call.
Hey, have a good one.
You too. 508-996-0500. That's how you get on the... Let's do one more before we go into the break. Thank you for your patience. Hello. Oh, sorry about that. Try it now. Hello.
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 Good afternoon.
Winging.
So I'm talking about this, and I think what he's really trying to do is detour some of that behavior, rioting, and if we remember, I think you're as old as me. You're around there. Even remember when the Harvard Square riots were? They were
back in the '60s, or are you talking about the stuff that happened last year?
No, back in the '60s.
Yes.
I mean, even them. I know my father was a cop in one of the surrounding towns, and they called up all the policemen. Sometimes, depending on the size, it's hard for police officers to really control, the situation.
Correct. Just hold that thought for a second. I won't argue that. And there are times that we call in the National Guard at what particular time, when the National Guard has been called in, have the Guard not been able to stop anything that's, remediate the problem?
I totally agree with you on that.
Okay.
I mean, that's where he should be going. I totally agree.
Well, you don't need the president to do an order for that. You already have that available. In this particular case, he's talking about calling the military up, and he's getting the Attorney General and the Defense Secretary to figure out how to make this happen.
Right. Yeah, and I think that needs to be tweaked. And maybe if he comes back with, like, we're saying maybe the National Guard is considered military. So, I mean, right, the National Guard, the auxiliary military, would you call them?
I don't know what their proper title is, but they've been around they're also known as the militia, but they've been around for the longest time, and they can be federalized, and they can, and they're local, but they get called in often enough.
You know what I think that's really good, and I just went to a retirement party up north, and all my family, big, huge family, all Democrats, and a lot of them are coming over and voting Republican because it's weird now. The Democratic Party, anything that seems to be for the people, for their protection, it seems like the Democrats are picking the wrong fight, and I don't really understand why they're doing that. Because I'll be honest with you, the common denominator at the party was they feel way safer than they've ever felt, and they're so sick of talking about immigrants and giving them due processes and clogging up, as they put it. I mean, and I wish they could get together and kind of figure that out, because they're really losing a lot of us by their views and how they're looking at situations. What do you think about that?
I think, as always with politics, it swings back and forth. You've got your hardcore Republican that is always going to vote Republican, your hardcore Democrat that's going to do the same thing. And then you put your finger up in the air, see which way the wind is blowing. People will vote for Trump this time around. Last time around, and Trump was law and order between 17 and 21, and he got booted out. So I think your family might be thinking the way that they are right now. Who knows what might make them change their mind down the road? But I think that's what the nation does.
I don't want to say everything's perfect, but it's like when you totally don't get both parties working together, your bench strength and the people that are really sharp, you're missing a whole pool by just going against each other and just, you know what I mean?
I hear what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree with it because we're all individuals. And while somebody might be headstrong on the economy, another person might think, no, it's immigration. And yet you have a third person out there that might be saying, but what about women's rights?
Yeah,
so that's how the country thinks. And that's the way the country, for the past 50 plus years, that is how the country has been thinking.
Right. Well, thank you for the call, and I appreciate it, and you've got a good show.
Thanks. I appreciate it. 508-996-0500. That's how you can get onto the program today. First time, Freedom Fools, Saturday afternoon. I hope we can do it. Strengthening and unleashing America's law enforcement to pursue criminals and protect innocent civilians. The title sounds absolutely great. Who would not want that? But then you start, the devil is in the details. Having the military performing police duties within the country, not policing like we do in some other countries. And quite frankly, we know what happens when our military has been used as a police action. Usually not too good. And so, again, if, as many of the callers have suggested, and I get where they're coming from, if they believe it, it's just to help a city that's going through a brief bit of turmoil, I remind you each time, look, I'm old enough to remember the Watts riots, the Boston Cambridge riots, as a previous caller brought up, Chicago riots, all kinds of riots. And each and every time, the National Guard, when they were called in, eventually they got control. National Guard, to the best of my knowledge, is already militarily trained. So why do we need to call in the 82nd Airborne? Something just is not right. And this order may be well-intentioned. You may be absolutely right. This is what the president is thinking today. Well, what happens, and I think this might be one of those weeks, I might be wrong, but what happens when protesters get unruly and they're out protesting the Trump administration right now? Does it mean that the president is going to say, all right, send in the military to quash down the protest on Boston Common, to stop the people from protesting by Dartmouth Mall or Fairhaven High School? And you might be saying, well, those are peaceful. Yeah, they all seem to start peaceful. And then something happens to agitate. And the next thing you know, it's blown out of proportion. Do we send the military in if and when Harvard and Columbia start doing their protests against the war in Gaza? Does it mean that the president can say, well, that's anti-Semitic and we need the military in there? What does this order really mean? And then, I would really, I know that there are city councilors, select board members, maybe even the mayor's office is listening today. And police officers. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and maybe it's best that you look for the executive order. It's right there online. And, I'm just telling you some of the stuff that sticks out like a sore thumb here. The Attorney General shall take all appropriate action to create a mechanism to provide legal resources and indemnification to law enforcement officers who unjustly incur expenses and liabilities for action taken during the performance of their official duties to enforce the law. So in other words, you can read this two different ways, but if an officer acts like George Floyd, Peter Chauvin, George Chauvin, whatever the guy's name was, all of a sudden our tax dollars are going to be used to help defend this guy. In fact, there's something in here that says this mechanism shall include the use of private sector pro bono assistance for such law enforcement officers. 508-996-0500. Hello.
Hi, Brian. Congratulations on your new show.
Thank you.
I like the introduction to it also.
Oh,
and
okay.
Everything that you're saying is absolutely right. And the problem is that outside interference in law enforcement from the military could lead to a coup in which a dictatorship follows. Now, the real problem of...
hold on.
Well, I wanted to get to my question.
I want to hear I want to digest what you just said. You said could lead to a coup. How would that happen?
Martial law, as you have already mentioned it.
Okay.
And the rules of martial law is basically that there's a serious national emergency. And, of course, if you got your own people out there judging the situation, they can create it as a national emergency to justify imposition of martial law. Now, my point would be, like here in New Bedford, a city of 100,000 is supposed to have 500 police officers to maintain order, where we've only got 230, the last 30 coming in the last year. And people don't want to, according to the mayor, I think he's probably correct, people don't want to be police officers as much as they used to. But my feeling is that the police officers are woefully underpaid, and the solution is not, violating posse comitatus. The solution is make the salaries attractive enough so that people will want to become police officers and apply. So the wrong solution from the president is an attempt to impose more of his, magisterial authority over everything. Pay the policemen what they deserve for a job that threatens their life and limb. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, there are two parts to that. Yes, they should be paid a good wage, salary, whatever the proper term would be. But I also believe that we have police officers fighting things that aren't really crimes or things, that people willingly do, and I guess drugs are the ones that I'd normally bring up. Gambling would be another. We should not have that kind of vice squad fighting those types of crimes.
And you know what the solution could be, as they used to have in Fall River? Independent police board of civilians to investigate abuses like that and who have control over the police. That's what we need. And are we going to get it?
Well, I don't know. Certainly by this executive order, it doesn't seem like it. It seems more like the federal. What it seems to me is the federal government trying to tell states and cities and towns how it's going to be.
Yeah, and seize control, order, and power over people, and directly answerable only to Trump and his crowd.
You got it.
So it sounds too much like a form of fascist dictatorship to me. And I think I mentioned on your other program that in Nazi Germany, first they smeared the media so they could get their story out, and then secondly, they smeared the courts so that they could control them, and they set up separate Nazi courts in every city and town and ignored the regular courts so that they could exonerate, as I said before, their brown-shirted bullies who beat people up in the street who disagreed politically.
Gotcha.
So
let me ask you something. Did you hear about this executive order before you heard me talking about it today?
No, I did not. And I am a news hawk.
Okay, I was going to say, what channels?
So many things, it's hard to keep up.
What channels do you watch for news?
All channels. I listen to right wing, left wing, NPR.
And none of them had this story.
I don't know. Anyway. I don't listen to them all the time. NPR is pretty good picking about things, but they may have considered some news more urgent than that.
What, Trump's 100 days?
Well, the particular topic you're bringing up. They are covering
I got to tell you, I'm looking at this topic right now.
Where are you getting it from?
I got the topic.
What's your source?
The source is the U.S. government right off of there.
In terms of the actual text, who's supplying it? Is it a particular news service?
Or? Government.
Well,
this is the executive order. I just copied the executive order as it's printed in the National Register.
Oh, in the National Register. That's your source, yeah. Well, I thank you for being diligent and tracking these things down. But there are people out there that don't care if democratic laws are broken. They want force rather than reason and even-handed justice. They are not, the blind goddess of justice. They've got one eye open to what's happening, and that's the eye of right-wing neo-fascism, in my opinion. Not all of them, but enough of them.
Gotcha. I appreciate the call.
Thank you.
508-996-0500. I really hope it doesn't go as far as what the caller is just now suggesting, but you got to read this order. And I have to tell you, as I did not know about it until Thursday. And I heard a little bit more about it yesterday, and I said, okay, I wanted to check to make sure that this is the real McCoy. And so I went on the computer and I just looked up executive orders and I put in the date. And there it is. And then, of course, I can see summaries and what defense attorneys are saying about it. But I wanted the actual text. You get that from the National Register, and it's all right here. So I'm not making anything up here. And a bigger point. This is pretty big stuff here. That gentleman didn't see it in the news. Anybody that called in today, I haven't heard anybody say, oh, yeah, I heard about this. It happened on Monday. Now, speaking for myself, there have been a lot of executive orders. But to me, this would be right up there at the top of the list for the news cycle. You would think that the news people would want us to know. And they've got enough people checking the National Register. They can find out just about everything else. The president, he loves talking about what he's been doing. For whatever reason, he didn't have a press conference about this one. Time for ABC to tell us what they want us to know. Let's see if they've got this particular story for you. 72 in Somerset, 66 in Fairhaven, 66 in New Bedford,